everyone, this week I'm going to explain dry brush technique. It is quite a delicate technique, so you do have to have the right amount of pressure to actually make it work efficiently. And I thought rather than rush it through with the other image, I thought it best to show you on some work that I've already done as to examples and situations when I would use dry brush technique. I would use dry brush technique is if I was working freely to do a portrait or to do something and I just didn't feel I had enough strength in an area at the end and I didn't want to re-wet it and get a wet edge and do that. So it's a very small amount of work, and these are the tools that you need. You need a brush that will splay out. Now I'm just using a small round brush, but I've actually pressed it into a thin edge and you see that it's dry. Now if anything, I'll show you, I'll put a blob of water on here and I could just put my bristles into it a little bit. I don't want it really to be a wet brush, so I wouldn't even dip it in the water. The second rule is that you don't wet the paint either. Obviously you can see my paint is wet, but it's not runny wet. You need it to be slightly moist. So I'm just going to dip into my black here, and you'll see by the way it's moving, it's not running around my palette. I am getting it on the bristles, but you can see it's a very thin coating. It's a very small amount of pigment paint. And that paint is quite dry. Now, I would never do dry brush technique without having a sample piece of paper to work on first. If you're doing it all the time and you really knew what you were doing, perhaps yes, but because this is all about pressure, then it does matter. Can you see the marks I'm making here are very dry? They're almost like fur or hair, and that's what we want. I used to say to my students, close your eyes, and if I would brush a little bit of colour on there, they could hardly feel that I'd touched their skin. So that's the main technique. The difficulty in this technique, I feel, is having the faith that something is going on before you may even see it, because it's such a delicate technique, and also the fact that you're working with such a small amount of paint and it's dry and it dries quickly. This brush is now almost too dry to work on what I was working on before, so I'm just going to go back into this little bit of wet. Yeah. And what I want to do is I'm going to flick down. My starting point needs to be on the top line of the eye, and you can use this technique in a way that you can gently rub the page. It's almost like rubbing a pastel, a soft pastel. See how it's not giving me a hard edge? I do not want a hard edge for this paint example. This technique is perfect for eyelashes, eyebrows and hair, and I'm just adding another drop of water to the paper. I'm just going to touch into the end of that a little bit more black paint, and I'll make sure my bristles are splayed out. I sort of touch them right at the neck there. Press up. You'll see they start to splay out. And now I'm just flicking outwards. So I'm touching the page in each spot at least 2 or 3 times to get the indication of the shadowy eyelash. I would do the same up here. You could even go harder. Don't lift your brush, just rub and move your hand or arm actually. And can you see how I've darkened that by, it's quite a soft feathery way to paint. Not only something as specific as that, but I could actually darken down here really subtly. And this is the thing, you have to it takes a while to even see what you're putting down. And people need patience for that to happen. I may go into this purpley colour now, so I'm going to rinse that brush off, but I'm going to rub it very, very strongly with my soon-to-be 20-year-old son's cloth nappy. Just rub it with something really absorbent so that you can feel that the bristles are dry again.
And like the paper, if the bristles are still really wet, they'll feel a bit cooler than what they should. So I'm going to go in and use this sort of a mulberry colour. It's out of my Derwent palette. And
splay the bristles.
I'm just going to start doing a little bit. Yeah, that's quite heavy, but you still can see that it has a soft edge. So it's almost like doing wet on wet, but it's instantly controllable because it's up to you to do this very, very soft, subtle little repeating marks. So remember, one mark shouldn't be seen that easily, like that. You want several marks and then you want to build them up. Another thing to remember is your point of contact. If you're coming in hard, you're going to make quite a strong starting point. You need to be able to start gently and finish off gently. So it's a down, touch the page and flick back up. Now here, I'm going to come around and just rub. So I'm keeping the brush on the page, but I'm really gently rubbing so it doesn't look sharp or hard. And I'm keeping the brush quite flat to the paper. I'm not stabbing it vertically. It's not a stiletto, it's a flat. So that will help me a lot. And I can tint shadows. I can influence them by very, very lightly dry brushing this purplish colour. So that's a good one to do as well. Over here, again, the brush is low to the page. I'm barely touching it. I'm going in little circles here to give myself a softness and moving my hand. But again, rubbing very lightly, just flying over the top of the paper. Nothing too strong. I'll leave that with you for now and wait to see any questions and comments of anything I may have missed out. You can use it with any number of colours. You can overlay it. I could go over that now with a nice orangey colour, just to show you I might. And I can influence that a little bit back towards orange because it's on that side. There's really no end to the use of this. It's a sneaky little fixer-upper tool that I use in my professional work. So I hope that helps you. You can use many different brushes, but the one not to use here is the liner or the rigger with those long bristles. This isn't a liner or rigger, but the longer the bristle, the less control you have right at the tip. So sometimes my old brushes, I'll even cut the bristle length in half, and that gives me a shorter, very controllable bristle. Okay, I hope that helps you and you found it interesting. Leave me a comment, let me know. Thank you. Bye.